We are up to Daf Kuf Lamed Beis. We'll do two blot tonight and pause in between the two blot. Okay, so the last thing we learned was Rabbi Yehuda said in the name of Shmuel that if somebody decides to give out an entire estate to his wife, he actually, and see, not to his children, he didn't really intend to give everything to his wife. He wanted that she should be the executor of the estate so that the children would need her help and they would treat her with due respect. And then we had a number of other cases where we say that basically he was only like the oldest brother, again, to be an executor, and people should honor them. And we said a number of exceptions. Everybody agrees there was nothing to do with honoring, but he actually intended it. If it was his ex-wife or just a wife that he just got engaged to, we don't believe that he gave it to them to be an executor of the state for people to respect, but rather he intended to give it to them as a gift for whatever reason. So now we're up to the Gemara of Kuf Lamed Beis Amud Aleph. The Gemara wants to know. Boy, Rava wanted to know, what about the Bari? The case, a healthy person. The case of Shmuel was a case where the person was dying, and therefore we say that he wanted her to be an executive of the state because he's about to pass on, and he wanted the children to continue to respect her. What about if he's healthy, which means that he will still be alive? So they would respect his wife anyway, regardless, because he's still there. So the Bari, in the case of a Bari, where he gives everything to his wife, he writes up, I'm giving all my assets to my wife. Hey, what would the din be? Do we say, B'shchiv Mera, when he's lying there, dying, he's happy to Lishtama Mila. He wants people to respect her and to hear what she has to say. Therefore, he made her an executor, and she controls all the purse strings. Avo the body, when it comes to a healthy person, he's still around, so he'll make sure that they give her the due respect. Perhaps, or even though he's healthy, he knows that one day he's going to pass on, and he wants the children to learn. It's not going to happen overnight, so maybe he's doing it now already, that they should know that she will be the executor of the state, so they should start treating her with respect from today. Which one is it? Toshma coming here, it says, if a man writes that he is going to give the dividends of his assets to his wife, the payers of his assets, so they're here right now, or he bought a property and they're eventually going to yield fruits. So and he said that she should he's giving it to her as a gift. Now remember, every husband owes a ksuva to his wife. So how do we treat this? Is goive ksuvasa min hakarka? The din is that she collects her entire ksuva. In other words, even though he gave her a gift, we don't say this is a substitute for the ksuva. This is an addition to the ksuva. So she still retains her ksuva, and she has the right to collect from the properties. There's a lien on them to give her a ksuva if the husband predeceased her. And this is an added layer. Or if he says, for example, he's going to give from the property lemachza, leshlish, uleravia. If he says he's going to give it, he said lemachza, leshlish, uleravia. He's going to give her half, third, or a quarter of the property. Goivik suvasa minashar. Still, he left behind other properties. So again, this is an addition to the ksuva. He's giving her a gift, but totally unrelated to ksuva. She still has the right to collect ksuva from the other properties. What happens if kosav kol nechosav leishtay? He says to his wife, I'm going to give you over all of my assets. How do we interpret that? Do we say that if he gave her all the assets, there's nothing left for her ksuva? Do we say in that case, she says, look, this is more than the value of my ksuva, so I am going to forgive my ksuva, I am moichel my ksuva, and now I'm going to have these assets. We're on Kuf Lamed Beis Amud Aleph. We're continuing the theme that we started yesterday about that if a husband gives all of the assets to his wife instead of his children, he really meant that she should be the executor of the estate and that the children should learn to respect her. And we had a question, what would the din be regarding a healthy person? So l'chayr, on the one hand, you can say he doesn't need them to learn respect from the wife because he's around, and anyway they'll respect her. Or do we say, no, the same thing applies, he wants them to start getting used to the idea that she's in charge, and they should give her the due respect. So we brought a Braisa. The Braisa says, that if a person gives a large gift to his wife, it's not a substitute for his ksuba. She still has a lien on the assets for the ksuba, and this is over and above. But what happens? He says to his wife, "I'm giving you everything that I have. It's all yours." Do we say that therefore that trumps the ksuba? She's moichel the ksuba because she's getting a lot more than that, and now she has all the assets, or do we say this is an addition to the ksuba? Because what happened here was the yotza olav shtarchayv. Suddenly, a lender comes along and takes a claim that he has a contract that they owes a lot of money, and seeing that the money that the father owes or the husband owes is far more than all the assets that he has. Now, if she forfeited her ksuba, then she has nothing left because this balchay, this lender, will seize all the assets. But if the ksuba still remains, and this is over above the ksuba, then the ksuba predates the loan that this person, the ksuba happened as soon as she got married to this person. So therefore, the lender can only take the assets over and above the value of the ksuba. So which one is it? So Kosov Kolochalishta V'Yosel Shtachoy. But Abelezer says Tikra Matanasa the Tamid Al Ksuvasa. Abelezer says, well, the matana is merely a layer above the ksuba. She still retains the ksuba, so therefore that part of the value of the assets, which is the equivalent of the ksuba, the lender cannot seize. He can only seize over and above that. The Chachamim disagree. They say that Tikra Ksuvasa, we rip up the ksuba. That doesn't mean literally, and not only doesn't mean literally, the ksuba is still effective. How is the ksuba effective? She's meichel the ksuba, and she says, you know what? I'm going to take these assets because at that time it was worth more than the ksuba, but the ksuba is still there. That any new assets that he buys, remember he's still alive and everything else is buried, that any new assets that he buys, she can what do you call it? The ksuba can collect from that. So the ksuba doesn't become null and void. It just means that at that juncture that he gave her the present, the ksuba she was the asset that she no longer has a lien on the assets. So say therefore particular ksuba, the tamid al matanasa. Too bad, she forfeits everything. V'nimtzas karachas mekan mekan. She's bald from both ends, which means, it's figuratively speaking, which means she loses out on both ends. She lost the ksuba because she accepted this great present, but now she loses the present because the lender stepped in and takes it all away. But Amar Rabbi Yehuda the baker said, interesting name for a Tana. Ma'isa, there's a story. This actually happened to my sister's daughter, the Kala, and her husband gave her a gift. It's exactly what happened. The lender came along and now wanted to seize everything, and she came before the Chachamim. But they said, Tikra Ksuvasa, the Ksuva is useless. She was Meichel, she forfeited her Ksuva when she accepted the gift. He didn't stipulate otherwise. The Tamid al Matanasa, all of it, and all the assets now are merely a gift. The Nimtzaz, Karachas, Mekan, Umekan, she loses at both ends because the lender comes in and takes everything away. So you say. So that's the story there. The Rishonim already say that this is only if the Yotzol Shachayv. At the time, it wasn't done in any. There's nothing sinister about this. The person forgot about the lender, and no one knew about this lender. But if the husband played this trick, this was a ploy, and to get the wife to forfeit her ksuba, and therefore he can pay out the entire loan from his assets, then it doesn't work. The ksuba is not meichel at all. Anyway, what are we trying to prove from this? The only reason is the Yatzal Shtarchayv. The only reason is because the Shtarchayv came out. When no Shtarchayv came out, then the wife would have been koine all the assets. But this is a matnas bari. This is a matana of a healthy person. So we see that it's not that she is an executor. She actually now owns it. It's different than a shchimera, which is merely an executor if he gives her all the assets. But if he's a healthy person and gives all the assets, he actually means it. And it's not an executor. What are we talking about? If the person was dying, we said before that if the person is dying, all she is an executor. How can the lender come and take it away from her? And the ksuba should still be intact. She's only an executor. Ella lav the talking about a healthy person. Clear. Says the Gemara, no proof. If you remember before, we learned there are a few exceptions where the husband gives it to his wife, and she's not an executor. And what case is that? In the case where we don't necessarily say that he's demanding respect. Rabavira Mukila Bekula Rabavira says it's talking about all the cases And that what? That in these cases, actually, kind of, in which case is that? We said in the case of a daughter, he decided to give it to the daughter amongst the sons, and or his wife, the one that she got engaged, or the wife that was divorced. In those cases, there he didn't really try to garner any respect. He actually intended to give her a gift. So we're talking about over here. In this case, we're talking about the wife, arusa or grusha. So this case of here is talking about a case where he actually gave it as a gift, but in an ordinary case of a wife, we cannot prove one way or another because the story might not have happened in that way. So we don't know. The question goes back by a bari when he gives it all to his wife. Does she actually acquire it, or is she also an executor of the state? We have no proof one way or another. Amar Rabbi Yosef Bar Yumi, Rabbi Yosef the son of Yumi, Amar Rav Nachman said Nachman, the halacha is tikra ksuvasa, she rips the ksuva, and the tamid al matanosa. The halacha is that you rip it, like the Chachamim say, that you rip apart the ksuva, and in other words, she forfeits the ksuva. On the other hand, she now owns all the assets, and the Balchai steps in, takes it all away. And we already said it doesn't mean literally ripping up a ksuva, because we'll see later if Kahana says that any new asset that he buys post that date, she is entitled to receive a ksuva from that. Lememra, so it comes out from here, the Ozil Rav Nachman Basar Umnuna. Umnuna is a general rule, which means that we can assess, even though we don't know what's going through a person's mind, and sometimes the person forgets to stipulate, make conditions, but we know from the circumstances exactly what the person is trying to do, and therefore we like we had in Mar Kedushin, Dal, I think it is, where a person was going to Israel, so he sold everything that he had, and then the war broke out, and he couldn't make it to Israel. So we say that maybe he can get his house back, because he's the only reason why he sold the house is thinking that he would that he's going to Israel. So it seemed in this case over here, it seems that that Nachman doesn't care about Umdana. The only reason why she was Meichel the ksuva is because she thought she's getting a gift. If it turned out to be that she's not getting a gift because the Balchayv, the lender, steps in, takes her all away, she never would have forfeited the ksuva. And the Nachman doesn't care. The Nachman says the law is that the ksuva is not valid anymore, at least for the past assets. So it seems that he doesn't follow the principle of umdana. And we can sometimes make assessments, what's really going through the person's mind. Let me ask you a question. Of a Tanya we learned, somebody's son went overseas, and the Shemet rumor had it that his son died. So when he was thinking about his last will and testament, he gave it all to somebody else. Either to somebody else who was next in line for the Yerusha, but not the son, or to strangers. But then what happened was, after he wrote it all off and everything else, and afterwards, his son suddenly made an appearance. So the din is, the Tanakama says, too bad. At the time you gave it, it was a valid matana. Nothing changes because the son came back. He didn't say, I'm giving you a gift because my son is dead. Had you said that something else, you said nothing. Even though we understand why you did it, otherwise you would have given it to your son. But the fact is, he didn't stipulate, so what you gave them is the gave. Rav Shimon ben Asiyah says, no, it's not a valid gift because umdana. We understand exactly why you gave it to that other party, but since your son really is alive, then you never would have, had you known, you never would have given it to the other person. Had he known someone's alive, like he never would have written and given to somebody else. And but Amar Rav Nachman halacha Rav Shimon ben Asiyah. Rav Nachman clearly states that the halacha of Shimon ben Asiyah, in other words, we do follow the rules of umdana. So how come when it comes to the woman, we don't say the rules of umdana? How come it comes to the woman, we don't say, oh, had she known that there's a lender out there, she never would have been meichel the ksuva. Because the Gemara shiny Hossam there is very different. She's getting something right now from the fact that the husband's prepared to give all of his assets to her. The fact that the husband gives all the assets to her speaks volumes, says that he trusts her in business, he trusts her generally in honesty, and that she's a good person. And even though and she thinks maybe there's a possibility I'll lose out. One day a lender might make an appearance, but right now I'm gaining something from it. So for that gain alone, she's happy to give up her ksuva, take the risk of giving up the ksuva because she got something in return. Not like the case of the son, where obviously the son had nothing. She's happy for word to get out. The husband was prepared to give her over all the assets, and that pleasure that she had, for that pleasure she received something. She's prepared to be moichel l'ksula. Tanhas, we learned over there. A new law. Somebody writes his assets over to his children, and the cost of leishtai, and he also writes karka kosher. Also says in that he's giving a gift to his wife, some of his land. The din is of the ksuvasa. So the din is that it says in the Mishnah, she loses her ksuvah, because now that she got a piece of property, she loses her ksuvah. That's what it says here. I don't understand. Because she received a small parcel of land, nowhere does it say that this particular parcel of land she received from the husband is equivalent of her ksuvah. The fact that she got a small parcel of land, she forfeits her ksuvah and substitutes with this piece of land. What's the logic of that? Says the one, the kosher lakaka koshu, just because she wrote a little bit of land of the ksuvasa, she loses her ksuvah. Why? Says the Gemara, Omar Rav said, the mezak lehen al yoda, talking about where the husband went over to the wife, and he said, "Do me a favor. I want you to acquire it on behalf of the children," and he gave her a piece of land because she did it and gave it on behalf of the children. That means that she knew exactly what's happening now, and she was a participant. That means it's a tantamount to her saying, "I am meichel my ksuvah. I'm meichel my ksuvah." Because she didn't complain, and not only she didn't complain, and she was a participant in giving over the land to the children. And there's nothing left for her except this little piece of land that she received, and that's as if she's accepting that whatever it is, it is. That's it. So she's meichel the entire lien that she had on the property. Says the Gemara, Shmuel says you don't even need to go that far and say that she participated in the acquirement for the acquisition of the children, but more than that. The father distributed, the husband distributed in front of her to the children, gave her also a piece of land. The Hisha second. She didn't say, "Hey, 1 second, where's my ksuvah? Where's the limit?" She said nothing. The fact that she said nothing, didn't protest, means that she acquiesced. Rabbi Yisrael goes a step further. But he said to her, "Tli kal kazu b'ksuvasach." He says, even if she wasn't there, and she wasn't there, she wasn't involved in the ksuvah at all, anything else. He just said to her, that karka that I'm giving you, I want you to take it as a substitute for ksuvah. And she didn't say and make any protest, say, hey, that karka might not be worth the true value of ksuvah. That means that she's happy to accept whatever he gave her. Why is that? And mekule ksuvah shanukan. This is a leniency that we have by ksuvah. It doesn't work in other cases, but by ksuvah, we have that, for example, the quality of the land doesn't have to be the premium quality. It doesn't even have to be average, it could be zaburius. And therefore, because she's not so, she's more interested in being married than making sure that she gets a proper ksuvah at the end. Says the Gemara, Tzara, we learned, Rabbi Yasi Eimer. I'm going to ask the question. So you're telling me that even though she didn't say so openly, but the fact that she was there, she did a protest, is enough to say the 3 different opinions we had at Rabbi Shmuel and Chanina is enough to say that she's Meichel Ksuvah. So let me ask you a question. We learned in the Mishnah, Rabbi Yasi says, Im kibla olam. The Mishnah says, if she was mekabel on herself, she took upon herself. She says, yes, I don't need the ksuvah. Right? She said, I don't need the any more lien on the assets. Afa pishalei kosovla, even though he didn't write to her, didn't give her any land. Not like before we said you have to give land. Is of the ksuvasa. So Rabbi Yasi goes a step further. Rabbi Yasi says that if she said clearly, I am meichel the lien, even though he did not give her any property, she loses the lien. Now Rabbi Yasi is arguing with somebody with Tanakama. So what does the Tanakama hold? Miklal the Tanakama Sava. Tanakama holds you need both. You need ksiva and kabbalah. It's not enough to say right to her, I'm going to give you a piece of land, like we said before. But we need more than that. We need that she should openly say, I accept that I no longer have a lien. You 3 Amoraim said from a behavior that's sufficient, is tantamount to her being meichel the ksuva. It seems to me clearly that Tanakama holds you need kabbalah. She has to openly say, I am meichel. So what's the shot? If you're going to tell me Kula Rabbi Yossi, you can tell me no. There's no opinion that argues with Rabbi Yossi that everyone, the entire mission of Rabbi Yossi means everyone agrees she doesn't really have to have Kabbalah. Ksiva is that Kabbalah alone is enough, or maybe Ksiva alone is enough. That he gave her a piece of property, it's good enough. So let me ask a question. What Tanya we learned? Rabbi Yehuda said, Masai. Rabbi Yehuda says, when is this said? This din of the Tanakhama. When is that said? Only she was there and she was mekabel. If she was standing there and watched her husband do this, kibla alay or kibla alay, she accepted the loss of the lien. She wasn't there. Of the ksuvasa, she does not lose the ksuva. So it's clear from here that she has to have kabbalah. She has to have kabbalah. She has to have kabbalah, and to be there, in other words, she has to openly say, "I am meichel my lien." If not, she does not lose the lien for Uksula. So how can these three Amoraim say that she does? The Yufta, the Kula, the Yufta is a question of all of them. So they're all repudiated. Is Amalei, Rabbi Nachman. So Rabbi went to Rabbi Nachman and he said, okay. He said to him, Ho Rab, we have the opinion of Rab. Ho Shmuel, we have the opinion of Shmuel. And we have and Ho Rab Yeshachanina, we have the opinion of Yeshachanina. Mar my what do you hold? What do you hold? So he says, in other words, Rabbi Yehuda is saying before, let me explain one thing. Even if she accepted the Meichel the lead, but she wasn't standing there, she could, it's not considered she was Meichel the lead. And the reason is, she can say, I only said to make my husband happy. Not because I really meant it. I wasn't even there and I was planning to protest in the future anyway. Anyway, so we're saying here, Yuram Nachman, what do you hold? So he said, he got a piece of land. What happens? Malay, he said to him, Shani Omer, I say, even that she is Moichel, even though she didn't say it. In other words, I paskin like Rabbi Yossi, they all follow the view of Tanakama, and they have a problem. Why? Because Rabbi Yehuda clearly says that she has to openly say that I am Moichel. But I follow the view of Rabbi Yossi, I paskin Rabbi Yossi, that even if she didn't openly say I am Moichel, it's good enough. What's the logic behind it? And the logic is as follows. Since he's dividing his assets amongst his children and he includes his wife, so she feels that she's equal to everyone else who's an heir, and therefore she's happy to give up the ksuva. Even also shuta ben abanim, because he's dividing amongst his children and he gives also a share to his wife of the ksuvasas, as if she's happy because she receives that, that she is moichel the lien of her ksuva on the properties and she'll collect for whatever he gives her right now. In fact, Itman Amilon, Rabbi Yossi Bar Yumi Rabbi Nachman, Rabbi Yossi Bar Yumi says in the name of Rabbi Nachman, the logic is that because she now is treated like a shutiv amongst the children, even though ksuvasa, she loses the ksuvah. Kitzingbar says now, boy, Rabbi has a question. The body, what about by a healthy person? If a person writes, I'm giving away all my assets. So this mission we just learned before. I'm giving away all my assets to my children. And he gave to his wife also a small piece of property. And in other words, he just made her a shutiv amongst the children. And we said that she forfeits her ksuva because she's happy to be equal to children. But what happened, it wasn't at the time of his death. What happens, this is while he is healthy. And what's the shaila? The body, when it comes to a healthy person, hey, how do we treat it then? Me, Amrin, do we say, the husband is dying and she knows that he will not receive any more properties. This is it. And she stood there and she received it and she didn't protest. That means she's prepared to be Meichel. She knows nothing else. This is it. She's Meichel her lien and she's taking this property and that's going to be in lieu of Ksula. But what happens if he's healthy? And if he's healthy, she might accept his gift because she's thinking he has a whole life ahead of him. He'll probably buy more properties and I'll get my Ksula from that. So she never intended to give up a Ksula. So how do we view it then? Me, how many do we say? Who the Yoda, she knows the Leslie, this is it, there's no other properties, and he's not going to buy anymore, obviously. So she's Michael, her lien. Aval, the body, when it comes to a healthy person, Savra, could be she thinks, Hadar Kani, that he will buy in the future, so I'm not Michael Maxim at all. I Dilma, perhaps, and I'll look later on the property that it gave me. If it's not worth the Ksula, I'm going to fight it as well. I do, or perhaps Hashta me as lesser. Right now, he gave away all the properties, and if she accepts it, it's tantamount to her saying, "I am Michael my lead." Peku, it's a question. Now the Gemara tells a story, a number of incidents that's similar to this din that we just learned. A person says, Palgal lebora to Palgal lebora. I'm giving half of my assets to one daughter, half of my assets to the other daughter. The tilsa leisas bepedi, and a third of the fruits of the yield should go to my wife. And Sigmar says, "Equal Rab Nachman Suda." Rab Nachman came to Suda. Oil, he went to Legabe Rab Chizde. Went to Rab Chizde. Chizde went to him. Omle said to him, "Ki agav namai." What would you paskin in this case? What would you paskin in this case? Is she give up her ksuva or not? Amalei. So he said, "Hocha mashmul." Didn't Shmuel say, Shmuel went a step further. Even if he divided all of his assets amongst his children, and all he gave her was one palm tree, which obviously is for his fruit, which is and then eventually the palm tree will die, and that's it, which might be worth a lot less than the value of a ksuva. Nevertheless, of the ksuvasa, she loses the ksuva. Amalei, so he said to him, Rabbi Chizat, Rabbi Nachman, 1 second. When the Shmuel say Hasam the Iknele Begufa Da'ara, she received a piece of land. All she's receiving is the yield. All she's receiving is the yield, which is metalklin. And so therefore, why is she giving up her lien on the land and all she's receiving is metalklin? She gives up nothing. So Nachman said, Metalplin. You didn't spell out. You told me, I thought you told me about fruits while attached to the tree. Metalplin. If she has metalplin, surely she does not forego the lien on her of a ksuva because she's receiving some, the yield after it's detached. Gemara tells a similar story. A person said, Tilsa lebora, the third to my daughter, the Tilsa lebora, the third to my daughter, the Tilsa leita, the third to my wife. Now we discussed before already, that even though she forfeits, let's say she forfeits a ksuva because she's accepting this land, but not that the ksuva is canceled, any new properties the husband brings in afterwards, she's entitled to collect the ksuva from that. But here's an interesting thing. Here, what happened was he gave out half the property divided into 3/3, 1/3 to his wife, 1/3 to each daughter. But what happened then was that one of the daughters died. When the daughter dies, who yashas the daughter? The father. So it's as if the father bought a new property, but really this was the property originally was the father. How do we view this property? Do we say that this property is a brand new property, so therefore the wife can take ksuva from that? Or do we say that this property, because now it reverted back to the father, he gave it to her as a gift, the daughter, but she died, it came back to the father, because this property originally was the father. It's as if it was reverted back to the father, and therefore, when the wife was forgone her liens on the properties, the lien that she had forgotten on this property before remains, and she no longer can collect from this property. How do we view that? Say one of the daughters died. Papa wanted to say she only is entitled to a third. She cannot collect the ksuva from the rest. Amalei of Kana said, why? Why should the fact that the property was his daughter's or the property was a stranger? It's the same thing. While it was the daughter's, it belonged totally to the daughter. When the daughter passed away, the father took the property back. Didn't take it back. It's like a new property. So there's no difference if he bought the property from a stranger or he bought it from his own daughter. It's a new property, and therefore the wife is entitled to collect the ksura from there. If he would have bought a new property, Mila Shakla, wouldn't she be entitled to collect the ksura from there? The kivan Ilohada Kani. Shakla is if he would have bought, she can collect. Is hashtanami shakla. So too in this case, the father took back the property from the daughter. It's not like he took it back as if it never happened, but he says it's like a new property, and the wife is entitled to collect the sula from there. And story number 3. There's a person that palgina lenichse. He divided his assets to his wife or the bnei to children, and shayach hadikle. But in this case, he didn't give it all away. He left behind one pop tree. So Savar Avinu Meir thought that lesla elachadikla. If he thought that in this case over here that she still has that palm tree, if she if there would be nothing left, if he distributed all those properties, we said before, and she received something, then she forfeits the lien on the ksuda. Because why? Because he's a partner to the children. But because one palm tree was left, she's entitled to collect from that palm tree. Because that's still there. Rav Yema said to Ravina, what happened was this palm tree that the father did not distribute, he didn't specify what he wants to do with this palm tree. He just didn't give it out. So therefore, Ravina said that she has a right to collect from this one palm tree her ksuba. And that's it. The rest was given out. However, Rabbi Yema said to Ravina, no. I lesla, the chadik nami lesla. Since if she does not get at all from her children, because you're telling me she cannot, you're telling me your mother she cannot collect the lien on the properties that were given out to the children distributed, she forfeits, and therefore she can only collect from this palm tree, and if it's worth less than the value of the ksuba, too bad. If you're telling me that she forfeits because she became a shuttif to all the children and so on and so forth, then she has no right to collect from the palm tree either, because she knew about the palm tree, yet she was meichel everybody. So therefore, less love, she has no right to go to the children. Then chadikla nami less love, she cannot go to the dekel either, because since she became a shuttif, she's happy with that. She's meichel everything else. What's the chilik between the children's assets or the asset that remained with the husband? So therefore, we're going to say, the only reason why you're telling me that she could take from the palm tree is because she wasn't meichel. If she wasn't meichel ksuba, then she can go back to the children as well, and collect from their assets as well. If she can collect from the palm tree, she can collect from all the assets as well. She collect from all the assets as well.